You woke up this morning and did something your ancestors could never have imagined. You turned a handle and warm, clean water appeared. You squeezed paste from a tube, put it on a perfectly designed plastic tool, and cleaned each tooth. You stood under hot running water for 10 minutes without thinking about it. And after all that, you probably still needed coffee before you felt human. Now remove all of it. No handle, no toothpaste, no shower, no plastic. Just you, the weather, the landscape, and a group of people facing the same daily problem. This is what hygiene looked like for most of human history, and the way our ancestors handled it is probably not what you expect. Let's start with teeth. Right now, your mouth contains around 700 different species of bacteria. Brushing does not eliminate them, it only keeps them under control. Ancient humans had no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no floss, and no mouthwash. Yet when archaeologists examine ancient skulls, they often find teeth in surprisingly good condition. Not perfect, not always better than ours, but in some ways healthier. A 2013 study published in Nature Genetics analyzed bacteria preserved in ancient teeth and found that harmful oral bacteria increased sharply after the agricultural revolution. Before farming, humans ate a varied diet: roots, berries, meat, nuts, leaves. Their mouths reflected that variety. After humans began relying heavily on grains and refined carbohydrates, cavity-causing bacteria multiplied. In other words, ancient people did not necessarily have better dental hygiene, they had better food. The moment humans started eating processed grains, they also created the perfect conditions for tooth decay. But they were not doing nothing. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient people used small sticks, often frayed at one end, to clean between their teeth. These tools have been found across Africa and the Middle East. Chewing sticks made from trees like neem or miswak contain natural antibacterial compounds that reduce harmful bacteria in the mouth. Modern studies have confirmed that some of them can work almost as well as a standard toothbrush. Ancient people did not know the chemistry. They simply noticed which sticks made their mouths feel cleaner, and they kept using them. Most people expect the next topic to be body odor, but before that, there is something more interesting: skin. Not how it smelled, but what lived on it. Your skin is covered in roughly 1.5 trillion microorganisms: bacteria, fungi, viruses, and tiny mites living in your pores. That sounds unpleasant, but most of them are not harmful. Many are protecting you. They compete with dangerous pathogens, regulate inflammation, and produce antimicrobial compounds that act like a living shield across your body. In 2018, researchers led by dermatologist Julia O at the National Institutes of Health published a large analysis of the human skin microbiome. They found that bacterial diversity on human skin has declined significantly in populations that use modern soap and hygiene products every day. The organisms we scrubbed away were not all dangerous. Some were keystone species that helped keep the whole skin ecosystem stable. Without them, opportunistic bacteria linked to acne, eczema, and chronic inflammation can move in more easily. Ancient humans never caused this collapse. Their skin carried a richer and more resilient bacterial ecosystem than ours does today. They were not cleaner than us in the modern sense, but biologically, their skin may have been healthier in certain ways. They still smelled, of course, but the balance of bacteria on their skin was different, and even without knowing the science, they understood something practical. Plants helped. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient people rubbed aromatic plants onto their skin: mint, lavender, juniper, sage. This was probably not just for fragrance. Many of these plants repel insects, but the result was the same. They smelled less like modern soap and more like the forest, which made sense in a world built almost entirely out of nature. Hair is more complicated. If you stop washing your hair today, you may go through what people call the no-poo stage. Several weeks where your scalp produces too much oil because it is used to being stripped by shampoo. Ancient humans never created that cycle. Their scalps were not constantly overcorrecting for modern washing habits. But the most important part of ancient hair care was social, not cosmetic. People picked through each other's hair to remove lice and parasites. This behavior, called social grooming, was not a small habit. It was one of the central rituals of daily life. Psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford has argued that grooming may have been one of the earliest forms of human social bonding, before language became complex enough to take over that role. Sitting close to someone and cleaning their hair requires trust, time, and physical closeness. Our ancestors did it for hours, not because they had nothing better to do, but because it strengthened the group. This connects hygiene to something much bigger: touch. Modern research shows that physical contact between trusted people can release oxytocin, lower cortisol, reduce blood pressure, and support immune function. A 2014 study published in Psychological Science found that people who received more frequent hugs were less likely to develop infections after exposure to a cold virus. In other words, physical closeness was not only emotional, it was biological biological protection. Ancient humans lived in a world full of touch. They groomed each other, carried children, slept close together, and sat shoulder to shoulder around fires. Their immune systems were shaped by the closeness of daily life. Today, the average adult in a developed country touches other people far less often than our ancestors did. We sanitize after contact, keep distance as a social habit, and replace touch with screens. Then we wonder why our stress, immunity, and mental health suffer in new ways. Water is simpler. Ancient humans were not afraid of water. They lived near it, needed it, and washed in it. The idea that people in the past never bathed is mostly a misunderstanding, often based on later medieval European habits rather than ancient human life. Groups living near rivers and lakes washed regularly. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last groups still living a traditional foraging lifestyle, bathe in rivers and clean themselves with water as a normal part of life. What ancient humans did not have was modern soap. The earliest evidence of soap production comes from ancient Babylon around 2800 BCE. Before that, people used what they had. Sand worked as an abrasive. Ash mixed with water created a mildly alkaline solution that helped cut through grease. Clay pulled oils from the skin when applied and rinsed away. None of this was as powerful as modern soap, but it was not useless. For bodies with a more self-regulating skin microbiome, it was often enough. Then there is the subject everyone wonders about but nobody wants to discuss: toilet habits. Ancient humans handled waste the way every other creature does. They went outside, but they were smarter about it than that sounds. Archaeological sites show evidence of latrine areas, specific places away from sleeping and eating spaces where groups repeatedly went to relieve themselves. That matters a lot. Separating waste from living areas is one of the most important public health behaviors in human history. Many of the great epidemics were not caused simply because people were dirty by modern standards. They happened because urbanization forced thousands of people into crowded spaces without enough distance between waste, water, and food. Small mobile groups naturally avoided many of those sanitation disasters. They were not necessarily more hygienic because they were wiser. They were more hygienic because they moved often and had space. What stays with me is this. For thousands of years, humans kept themselves clean enough to survive, build cultures, form relationships, create language, and make art, without factory-made products. Their methods were simple, but they worked. Chewing sticks, aromatic plants, social grooming, latrine areas, natural water sources. These were not primitive failures. They were practical solutions. Some of them still hold up today. Miswak sticks, for example, are still studied because their antibacterial properties are real. And some of what ancient people had, a stronger skin microbiome, more daily physical contact, and a closer relationship with the natural world, we may have damaged in the name of progress. Your morning routine is extraordinary. Hot water, engineered toothpaste, running showers, clean bathrooms, all of it is the result of thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. But for most of human history, hygiene was solved differently. It came from paying attention. Which stick cleans your teeth? Which plant keeps insects away? Where to wash? Where to sleep? Where not to leave waste? Your ancestors were not simply dirty. They were working with different tools. And some of those tools were better than we ever gave them credit for.